War Dogs is brought to us by the director of the Hangover trilogy, Todd Phillips, and stars Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. It's based on true events and the book that documented it called Arms and the Dudes by Guy Lawson. It's essentially the story of these two young guys, played by Miles Teller and Jonah Hill, who get this big government contract worth $300 million to basically supply arms and ammunition to America's allies during the Afghan War. This film slowly crept up my anticipated films of the year list. At first, when I first saw trailers, I really wasn't that excited about it. But as it got closer to the release, I actually got really excited for no reason whatsoever, and it turned out to be a really great thing. Let's delve into the positives first. Now, one of the big positives for me was the story. Now, although this is based on true events, it is pretty over-dramatized in certain aspects just to bring more of an entertainment value, really, is what it brought to it, to make it a film. Because it's based on true events, maybe real life isn't all that exciting. But just because it's based on true events and some of the things that happen in this film, as well as what really happened in real life, is just so absurd, I think that helped draw me in.
Hey, seriously, is this safe, driving to Baghdad?
Yes, very safe. 50-50.
50-50, what, like 50% we live, 50% we die?
Yes, that's why we drive through night. It's much safer.
How much safer?
50-50.
Bro, what the? Obviously he doesn't know what 50-50 means.
It sounds absolutely crazy, but it happened, which is definitely what helped draw me into this film. Another big positive was the acting, especially Miles Teller and Jonah Hill. Now, they were both pretty big surprises. Miles Teller had a bit of a black mark on his filmography with Van Forstic. Jonah Hill has been kind of hit or miss. He doesn't really seem to be like the big Hollywood type of guy. I mean, he's had like 21 and 22 Jump Street, and as well as being part of several Seth Rogen films. But I feel like this one really helped him a lot. It really showed Jonah Hill is basically an asshole for most of this movie. He's a complete dick, and he plays that very well. I don't know what it was, but he really brought it for this role. He does that role so well. As for Miles Teller, he's more of the guy that you relate to. He's more of the everyman in this one, the one you're supposed to feel a little bit more for. He's got a kid on the way, stuff like that. But you definitely get a sense that these characters, although they're very different, they work extremely well together. And although there is no really sequel to this, I hope they work together in future projects because their chemistry was absolutely great. I love that. Also, Bradley Cooper makes an appearance. He's not really in the film very much, but the scenes he's in, he very much commands the scene. Your eyes are drawn to Bradley Cooper. He just has this sort of charisma to his character. You're wondering about who this guy is. So it brings a lot to him when he's in the scene, even if it's with a main character. So that was kind of interesting as well. But I think Miles Teller and Jonah Hill were definitely the big standouts of this film, which they should be. They're the main characters. The final positive of this film is the style. You could definitely tell the influences to several other films. You could see how much Todd Phillips' style really got into the grips of this film. You could really see that style, especially comparing it to certain scenes in The Hangover, stuff like that. But it also added a lot of darkness and grittiness that the Hangover trilogy didn't have. Probably because it was based on a true story, that you really got that dark, gritty feel to it. And it really added to the whole meat of the movie. It felt real. And I think that's also another reason that drew me in, because it was so absurd and it looked so realistic at times, even with some of the crazy sort of tones to the film, like drastic greens or blues or reds, whatever like filters they had at certain times. But it definitely added to the film, and it was visually very interesting to look at. Now let's get to the negatives of this film. One of the biggest problems that I had with this film was pacing. There were times where it was super slow, and there were times where it just completely jumped a segment that seemed interesting. For example, I feel like Todd Phillips did a much better job with The Hangover, which these characters went through this situation that they don't remember purposefully because they were drunk and all that stuff. And then they sort of progress through that and sort of have to figure out what happened. Now, if they had done something a little bit more similar to that with this film, where the characters sort of snowballed and figured out how they got into the business of gun running, stuff like that, how they got themselves into that situation, I think it would have been a lot better. This one kind of only focuses on like one or two main deals outside of them being introduced into drug running, as well as like having all this money and power all of a sudden. They kind of skipped that part. So I wish they would have better paced the film as far as like character development. Like it worked for me for the most part, but at the same time it felt rushed. So the stuff that seemed interesting was rushed, but the stuff that wasn't as interesting sort of took its time a little bit, and that was kind of annoying, especially pace-wise. Another sort of negative I have is I felt like it was a mishmash of several other films. Now, I'm going to give you an equation because this equation makes up what War Dogs was, at least for me. I could see every visual cue, every sort of story cue that was pushed into this film that sort of made War Dogs like a mishmash of various films. So basically this is the equation. Lord of War plus Pain and Gain plus The Hangover with a sprinkle of Scarface equals War Dogs. I dare anybody to refute that equation, because when you see this film you go, oh yeah, I can definitely see the influences or the story elements of both of those, or of some of those films, and you sort of see how it's all mashed together to create this film. Not that that's a bad thing. If you like any of those films, if all of them, like I did, you'll enjoy this film, and I definitely did. But if you don't like a certain aspect of maybe one of those, maybe you won't have such a good time with this film. So this isn't really a negative, this equation. It's more of just something that I picked up on while watching the film. The grade I'm going to give War Dogs is a B+. As I said before, I was really surprised by this film. I did not anticipate it whatsoever, but as it got closer and closer to release, I got more excited for it. And when I finally saw it, it actually was pretty good. I'm not sure if that's thanks in large part to it being based on a true story, the absurdity of the story, or the fact that it sort of mishmashes a lot of different films that I already like Lord of War, Pain and Gain, The Hangover, and a little bit of Scarface. But I think that sort of adds to what makes it so great, is because it takes the best parts of those and sort of makes it into one thing. So if I want to watch certain elements of those films, but don't want to watch the whole movie, like Scarface is 2.5 hours-ish, and I would much rather watch War Dogs where I got to see the good stuff instead of all the boring stuff as well. But I definitely think this is worth watching because, number one, based on a true story, number two, the acting is great, and it's just worth it to watch. It's definitely entertaining to watch, and that was what surprised me the most, is I thought it was going to be kind of boring, but it ended up being pretty darn good. So guys, have you seen War Dogs? What did you think? Do you think my equation is right, or do you think it should be tweaked a little bit? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and like always, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.